Hi, I'm Mike Ryan. Recently, a viewer made a suggestion about doing a video on mining districts. I thought that was a pretty good idea, so that's what we're going to do today. But before we get to the topic of mining districts, I'd like to give some background about how I organize the structure of the parts 1 and 2 of Turquoise in America. With part 1, we had a basic theme, which was the attempt by East Coast jewelers to establish a monopoly on the turquoise trade. They were not successful in that effort. And you can read about that in Turquoise in America, Part 1, Great American Turquoise Rush, 1890 to 1910. To follow up on that central theme, we looked at the area where they first started working, which was in New Mexico, which was really two companies, the American Turquoise Company operating in the Cerrillos Hills in Santa Fe County, and the Azure Mining Company operating in the Burro Mountains in Grant County. From there, we talk about the efforts in Arizona, which is primarily at Mineral Park, which we now know as Kingman, and in the Halloran Springs area in the Mojave Desert in California. By the time we get to part 2, we have a new theme, and that's basically that tourism opens up new markets, and we see the investment shifts from East Coast to West Coast, centered primarily in Los Angeles. When you're doing a history and you're covering the periods of 1910 to 1990, which we do in Turquoise in America Part 2, you're by necessity going to address chronological timeline. And we do that. Chapter 2 is 1910 to 1940. Chapter 3 is 1940 to 1970. And Chapter 4, 1970 to 1990. From that basic structure, we go from different states, discussing the different states involved, and then the areas within the states. For California, it was still going to be in the Halloran Springs area, although we see much, much less activity going on in the periods after 1910. Arizona, well, the story there was and is the large copper mines and the efforts to extract turquoise, in spite of efforts by these copper mines to make it as difficult as possible, oftentimes. Colorado, we really have two major mines there, King Manasseh and Villa Grove. So our focus was pretty much centered on those particular towns as opposed to a mining district. New Mexico, very little activity after 1910 in mining, and there has continued to be little activity. But what was done, again, centering in the Cerrillos area and around Silver City in the southern part of the state in Grant County in the Burro Mountains. Now, Nevada is where we really get into a discussion of mining districts. In Nevada, we're going to divide between activity in the northern part of the state, activity in the southern part of the state, and then we move to county, then to mining district, and then down to specific mines. So you can read all about that in Turquoise in America Part 2, 1910 to 1990. But to give you an idea of the mining districts in the different areas, let's take a look at a map that was included in the famous Report 17 of the Nevada Bureau of Mines, authored by Frank Morrissey. And we also have that complete story of the background. Morrissey was quite an interesting character, newspaperman and multi-background, and expert at archery, all sorts of activities, quite a fellow. So you can read about him in part 2. But for now, let's take a look at a map that was included in that report and see some mining districts. I want to start by looking at the full map, and we are going to zoom in so you can get a closer look at some detail here in a minute. But you can see how, for looking at mining districts, Nevada is the best example of all the states that we study in Turquoise in America. because it has the highest concentration of mineralization of turquoise and variscite in the United States. And we can see this band, this geological formation, which runs here from the southern part of the state. And here we have Esmeralda County, right down here, Mineral County, and Nye County. Nye County is a huge, big county here. Most of the concentration in Esmeralda, but you see how it runs up here in this turquoise zone, all the way up here into finally up into Elko County, going through Eureka County, with the biggest concentration here in Lander County. And we will take a closer look at this area of the enlarged map here in just a moment. But this gives you a good idea, an overview of why Nevada is so important when we're looking at the mining districts. So here we're looking at the index to the mines and prospects on the map of turquoise deposits in Nevada. This was compiled by Frank Morrissey. 1968 was when it was published. Morrissey had passed away before then, but it took a few years for the Bureau to get this published. We see here for Esmeralda, we can see a different listing of the mines here. I think you can read through those and see those. They're not really defining the mining districts as much as they do here in Lander County. And in Lander County, we see the Copper Basin area, which has the Turquoise King, Blue Gem Lease, which goes under different names of the contention, Pedro Lode, Turquoise Tunnel. But the best example of a mining district and a concentration is here with the Bullion District. And here we see 17 listed turquoise mines within this district. So we're going to take a closer look as we see how those mines are located within the Bullion District. So here's a close-up of the mines in the Bullion District. We're not showing the Copper Basin, that's would be northwest of that. So two different mining districts. But we can see here the mineralization running here from the south. And that's Turquoise 50, not a mine that we really know much about. It was really famous. We certainly don't see Turquoise 50 turquoise. A little more famous is the Stenage mine, which we do document in part 2. Then we start to move up here into this area that we're much more familiar with in the Tanabo group, is what it's called because of the old ghost town, Tanabo town, that was nearby. And these are going to be these running here from the Little Gem, Cracker Jack, up here to one that's much more familiar here is the Super X. And right around here, around number 8, Little Chief, right here, right where I'm pointing here is where we're going to have the famous Lander Blue, which of course was located after this map was produced. We get in here just above Super X, and we see a big concentration of the Badger, Colorback, another Blue Gem, Blue Eagle. Now, Blue Eagle is a great story there. Turns out there really isn't a Blue Eagle. It's just sort of an amalgam of a bunch of turquoise mines that was marketed and sold under the term Blue Eagle. And you can read about that in part 2. But this gives you an idea of the concentration in that Tanabo group area. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing a little bit about how in Nevada mining districts were an important part of turquoise deposits.